I am Anthony Newbold. Welcome to A Closer Look. We begin the year talking about education. And so my guest is the Minister of Education, Science and Technology, the Honorable Jeffrey Lloyd. Minister, welcome to the show again.
It's always a pleasure. Thank you very much and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. Listen, we're going to begin this. I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about it, but begin the year, release the results of the national exams. For the most part, not very good commentary on the results of those exams. You have a different view.
Of course. And I'm very happy about the results, all things considered. And I've made this point several times. And if you would please kindly permit me, I shall speak no more about these national exams 2020. I consider the exams to have been a success, all things considered. Students in the 12th grade and some in the 11th grade who take these national exams, students in the 8th and 9th grade who take the BJC exams, under extraordinary circumstances. The term that has been continuously used is unprecedented.
Yeah.
With a pandemic, with schools coming to a close in March of last year, 2020, and with many students not having the benefit of internet access or devices, and having to find ways to motivate themselves and to inspire themselves to continue with their education, and did so, with exams being put on and then having to be canceled and put on again and then having to be canceled for the variety of reasons that we know of in the pandemic, and eventually those exams again being written in July of last year. Remarkable, unbelievably so. And when we look at the results compared to any other year, especially the year 2019, in the BGCSE, you had 15 out of the 27 subjects that showed an improvement, more than half, showed an improvement in a pandemic year, in a year that was preceded by Dorian. And in the BJCs, you had 6 subjects that showed an improvement. You had thousands of students, 10,000 plus, that sat in the BJC, 6,000 plus that sat in the BGCSE. And if that's not success, if that's not remarkable in the context of what we experienced in this country and the world experienced in 2020, then I don't know what is, and I'm not going to expend any energies trying to convince our people further. I'll say simply this, though. It's unfortunate, and I've been in education now for 46 plus years. It's probably the most disappointing period of my life in the recent couple of weeks to hear the commentary about our students, really. It's about our students. And it's disappointing because they deserve to be commended, to be encouraged. The teachers deserve to be congratulated for the extraordinary efforts that they made. Mrs. Sawyer and her team at the Testing and Evaluation Center, to be congratulated and to appreciate it for the, again, outstanding work that they did in putting these exams on and coming to the place where we could have results in the fashion and the time that we did.
You think that may be, and again, we say the education system needs to be reformed, tweaked, however you decide that ought to be. But you understand, you were not always in the system per se, in management of the system. You had your views as well. People may have their view of our educational system because we're focusing on this national average, this G grade. Is it time to move away from focusing on that?
When I was misinformed, I sought information that would enlighten me. And I give credit to Mr. Lionel Sands, because one day when I am berating the education system and this national D average, he gave me a call. And he said that you are comparing apples to almonds, literally. You and I come from a GCE system, he told me, when there was a 5-point grading scale. Today it's a 7-point grading scale. So what was average back then when you and I at St. Augustine's took our GCs, which was a C, on a 7-point grading scale, an average is a D. A D is indicating that the student has successfully completed the work that you would have been taught. In fact, according to the BGCSE and the national exams, it is targeting 80% of those students. And in this year, as in every other year, it has been more than 80%. In matter of fact, in 2020 it was 82%. So if your target is 80% success and you have achieved beyond that, how could you not say it is successful? But again, if we decide not to be enlightened, if we want to remain uninformed, and I certainly didn't want to because I'm an influencer of public opinion on the radio, and I was grateful to Mr. Sands to enlighten me. And he provided me with information, which we have been doing since we came to office, and other administrations have been doing since they have been in office, to invite our people to understand that this is not the GCE. This is the BGCSE with a new paradigm of assessment. But again, like I say, I ain't talking about that no more.
Yeah, I'm sure you're going to be asked about it at some point, even if not today. Listen, talk about success. You're pretty pleased about the graduation success. Whatever people say about these exams, you had a pretty good graduation rate since you've been Minister of Education.
Very, very pleased. And that's if you want to use a barometer of success. That's your barometer of success. That's the barometer that is used by the world, as a matter of fact, Mr. Newbold. Because the United Nations and all of its auxiliary organizations some years ago targeted that we want by 2030 that 85% of the students leaving high school would achieve the minimum standard required for graduation. 85%. When I walked into the door on May 15th, 2017, the graduation rate in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas was 46%. Today it's 59%. In 2.5 short years, even a year that has been interrupted by a pandemic, and previous to that, a Dorian. And we are well on our way to meeting that goal. And matter of fact, in my estimation, we are going to achieve that goal far ahead of the 2030 deadline. Today is 2021, and we are now at or just about 60%. We are going to be successful in meeting these standards. And again, credit goes to our students and their parents and our teachers, who labor long and difficult and challenging hours in sometimes unfortunate conditions to assist our students in meeting this very, in my mind, the most noble objective, and that is to satisfactorily complete a course of study such that you attain a diploma, not a certificate, a diploma, which is graduation. 60%, 6 out of 10. When we came to office in 2017, less than half was achieving it. Now we are well on the way to a great majority of our students doing so. If we want to use a barometer, let's talk about that. Because when we talk about the exams, there are many students who don't take the exams for whatever reason, in any year. Last year, the same.
Yeah. Are there some areas that you pinpoint and you say, this is the reason, these are the reasons why we've gone from 30% to 60%?
Teachers, students, understanding and appreciating parents, the importance of education, and recognizing that this is your ticket to lifelong success. Because if you're having a challenge getting out of high school satisfactorily, think about it. Think about your employment opportunities in year 5 after high school, in year 15 after high school, when you have now begun a family. And you're still stuck in what you might consider to be low-paying jobs. Why? Because of low skills. Now, when you have this chance to get on with a high school diploma, you're now able to move into tertiary institutions in education. You're now able to qualify for scholarships to you're now able to move into certain kind of work in which those employers are looking for a certain standard of candidacy. Very proud.
Very proud. Okay, I want to talk to you about the science and technology part of your name. We don't always talk about that, but I want to talk about it when we come back. We're talking with the Minister of Education, the Honorable Jeffrey Lloyd. We'll be back on a closer look after this. Welcome back to A Closer Look. I'm Anthony Newbold, speaking with the Minister of Education, the Honorable Jeffrey Lloyd. You're the Ministry of Education, Science and Technology. And I always say that sometimes that science and technology was just added to the end there, but not that much focus was placed on it. Beginning last March, you didn't have a choice. You had to deal with the technology part of your ministry. You had to change the way you delivered education to people. Now, it's virtual. You got to use the tablets and rate your success so far with delivering education.
Well, if you would kindly permit me to just make one small correction, actually, it's just simply the Ministry of Education.
Okay.
It has gone through various
gone through,
nomenclatures,
yes.
but be that as it may, not a difficulty at all. Upon coming to office, we envisioned that we needed to use technology in the delivery of education. Read the manifesto of the Free National Movement, distance education was one of its promises. And we began almost immediately, because quite honestly, it was challenging to recognize that we had a system in which technology simply was not being utilized to the efficient method, that it possibly could have. And so what we began immediately was to digitize the system. And I said this at the very beginning in the House of Assembly when I made my maiden speech, as it were, the budget, that our intention was that within a year or so, we would have the system 100% digitized for many benefits. First of all, we're talking about the delivery of education for our students in those family islands where they have been short of teachers for many years. When you are depriving our students of that very important ingredient in their education, they're going to have long sufferings in the years ahead, and many of our students did. They were not able then to qualify for scholarships. They were not able, unfortunately, to meet the standard to get into the University of the Bahamas. So distance education. And that is why we began aggressively moving toward digitizing the system so that we can institute distance education. As a result, in September of 2019, we began our virtual school. And this school then enabled those students, particularly in the MyCal constituency, but others elsewhere, to now plug into the school and take advantage of those subjects that before now they would not be able to. For instance, subjects in science and mathematics and foreign languages and so on. The day after the school was launched came Dorian. Yes. It was a godsend, because now we have thousands of students, some 10,000 between Abaco and Grand Bahama, who are displaced. They have no physical structure to go to. Many of them came to New Providence and other family islands, but some remained in those respective islands. How were they going to be instructed? Through virtual education. And as a result, we continued on. 6 months later comes the pandemic.
Yeah.
Thank God we had a virtual school. Thank God we had almost 80% of our school system digitized, so that now we can employ the technological entrapments, such as, for instance, the use of the internet, the use of devices, and so on. What we realized immediately, Mr. Noble, was that a large swath of our students didn't have devices, or didn't have internet, or both. So we began an immediate campaign, of course, government resources, purchasing devices, and working with our partners, Alive, Cable Bahamas, and BTC, to ramp up the capacity of internet for all of those who would have been able or would need it, to do the same thing for our schools. Thankfully, today, along with many of our corporate partners, we are just about there now with the provision of devices in the hands of every single public school student. We started out with a 36,000 short device. Mm-hmm. Today, we're only 5,000 short device. And we hope that by the end of March, we will have secured the remaining 5,000 so that every public school, 46,000 plus, will have in their possession a device, and that across the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, but particularly here in New Providence, we will have robust internet connectivity.
There's still some people who won't have that. They don't have electricity for whatever.
We have recognized that, and this is why every week our teachers produce what we call resource packets or lesson packets. And they are invited, the student invited with the parent, to go to school and pick up the week's work of lessons. They do their work during the week, turn it in on Friday. The teacher gives them another packet for the following week, and at the same time begins marking those that they need. But we are going to have that remedied, this issue of internet deprivation, because we're working with Cisco. Obviously, we're working with the Department of Transformation and Digitization, and we are well on our way, I think, to remedying that situation, working with the urban renewal centers. The libraries all have internet. Of course, our schools have the internet. So even during the afternoons or in the evening times, we have now a situation where Cisco is providing internet on parks and neighborhoods. I don't think on New Providence and Grand Bahama and Abaco there's going to be an excuse as to why you cannot access the internet. And certainly, as a public school student, you would have had a device.
Those who don't have the device, as far as you're aware, have they been collecting those packages?
Oh yeah, definitely. Again, like I said, there's an improvement, an upgrade, an enlightenment about the value of education. People are taking it much more seriously now. Everybody realizes that education is everybody's business, and they're taking advantage of it.
You had some challenges with your platform when you rolled it out. Are those challenges, have they been addressed?
They have been addressed. We had contracted One-on-One, which is a subsidiary or a connection to BTC out of Jamaica, on day one, October the 5th, not recognizing that there would be such a rush of persons seeking to access the system within a short period of time, 10, 15 minutes, the system crashed. It was up in a couple of hours, but that was no comfort to persons who had now moved on to other platforms like Google and Microsoft Teams and so on to enable them to continue with their instructions, talking about the resilience of our teachers.
Talk about those teachers. You have enough teachers. People appreciate what needs to happen. Teachers need to appreciate what's happening. They're not in school anymore, a physical classroom. They're teaching from home or wherever. Your teachers on board as much as they need to be with what you're doing?
Very proud of our teachers, proud of their resilience, proud of their adaptability in this situation. Of course, we put on many training sessions so that they could get up to speed. This is brand new for many of them, as you know. We're not just talking about engaging technology, but we're now talking about teaching, using technology. That's a whole different ball game. And so thankfully, with One-on-One, as well as Cisco, as well as BTVI, we have been running series of courses, repeating those courses so that we had teachers pairing with one another, those who are much more savvy technologically, as well as those who may have some challenges, like reticence, reluctance, moving them. And I'm grateful that they are moving along. And as we continue to roll out new features of the system, the LMS system, now that we are introducing the EMIS, Educational Management Information System, which of course requires yet further engagement. That still requires some more training. Happily that we are doing that. And so yes, it's a work in progress, Mr. Noble, and I'm satisfied with the progress we are making. And I expect that we are going to be very well situated, certainly for the rollout of the new, in my mind, the new school term, which has already begun, but what we hope is going to start in earnest in February when we have face-to-face.
Okay.
Looking forward to that.
Yeah, you look forward to that. I wanted to ask you about that. We got to take a break, but I want to know the percentage face-to-face, virtual, where you are with that. Don't answer me yet, because I want us to talk about that at length. We're going to talk about that when we come back. Anthony Newbold, a closer look, and we're talking with the Minister of Education, the Honorable Jeffrey Lloyd. We'll be back after this. Welcome back to A Closer Look. I'm Anthony Newbold speaking with Minister of Education, the Honorable Jeffrey Lloyd. Minister, face-to-face, you're talking about coming back into school. What's the percentage of face-to-face as opposed to virtual as we speak here today?
About 1/3 of our students are now in face-to-face, and those would be in other islands except New Providence and Abaco. New Providence, we have approximately, between Abaco and New Providence, we have about 30,000 students. If you have 46 in the system, 46,000. So you're looking at maybe 2/3 of our students who are now in the virtual space. I can tell you that parents would love their children going back to school. Students would love to have the opportunity to go back to school, face-to-face I'm talking about, as well as teachers. Many teachers have approached me and says, please, I don't want to see my baby, so I want to see my children. Of course, we are guided by the Ministry of Health and the health officials.
Yeah.
And as soon as they give us the green light, we expect that we will be back face-to-face in New Providence and Abaco. And I hope to God it is as early as the 1st of February, which is a couple of weeks from now. Naturally, they are taking a look to see what the impact of the previous holiday season, Christmas and New Year's, would have been in terms of virus infections. Once they, that information and that assessment and whatever it reveals to them, then of course we will sit down with the Ministry of Health and the health officials and determine how we can go back to school. We are in our process of preparation for that and have been for the last several months. We believe, certainly in those schools in New Providence, the bigger ones, that the best we could do for the time being would be hybrid. That is, some students on some days, some students on the other days, and those that are not on the physical campus would still continue with their virtual lessons.
So for the most part, face-to-face in the other Family Islands, other than New Providence, Grand Bahama, Abaco.
No, Grand Bahama is face-to-face already.
Grand Bahama is
face-to-face, yes. Some schools in Exuma are not face-to-face. Some schools in Eleuthera are not face-to-face. That's the emergency order.
Right.
Now, let me make a distinction. Private schools, however, once receiving permission from the Ministry of Education after having consulted with the Ministry of Health, can return, if permission is granted, to face-to-face, and many of those schools have done so, particularly primary and preschools. They've already done so. Some of the high schools, private high schools, are now negotiating how that is going to be done, because they too have large populations, 800-900 students.
Yeah.
So it's not easy for them to accommodate all of those students on campus at one time. So many of them have worked out the arrangements and are looking at also blended circumstances. So independent school systems have already begun working their own strategies out as to how they're going to deal with the face-to-face.
We talk, and you may or may not know this, you're the Minister of Education after all, about the system that you use, the platform that you use for public schools. What do you know about the private schools and how they've been able to adapt to this new?
Many of them are using some of the platforms that we use. For instance, Google Classroom is a very common a platform that they use, and many of our teachers use that platform. We are using the Learning Management System platform. The University of the Bahamas is using the Banner platform. The Learning Management System is being used at BTVI. Some of the smaller schools can get away with using, say, the Google platform. But when you're talking about 47, 50,000 students, and you need a system and a platform that is much more robust, one that is adaptable, and one that can easily be adjusted according to your specific needs. And this is why we went with the one-on-one, the LMS system out of Jamaica, because this is tailored for our specific needs. Remember, Jamaica, Trinidad, and Barbados is one land mass. We have 16, 17 population centers on which there are schools and teachers' residences and so on. So we are not the same as, say, for instance, those other Caribbean islands. So we have had to make adjustments to fit our particular and peculiar circumstances.
You had problem getting enough teachers. That's a perennial challenge.
Perennial challenge. We have a serious continuing challenge of sufficient teachers, which we expect that technology is going to remedy. And this is why we moved so aggressively towards that when we first came to office, because for years those students in the Family Islands really had a pretty serious time with getting the cohort of teachers that they need, particularly in the science and other subjects. And this year again we have the same challenges.
Which also means that you got to have a conversation with the University of the Bahamas about how teachers are going to be trained now.
Not only that, we're going to have a conversation with the Bahamian people about making teaching and the career and education attractive. It is not one of the, as you would expect, the premier choices for our students. It's simply not. And we have seen over the years a continuing decline of students entering in the School of Education at the University of the Bahamas. Okay, again, like I say, I expect that technology is going to remedy this. And it may not be an issue in the future, in the very short future. But at the moment, there's still that body that is necessary, whether you're dealing with the virtual school or whether you're still dealing with teachers in the classroom who will be piping instructions to students while they are away from the physical classroom.
Let's talk about the makeup of the teaching corps. Always a problem. We don't have enough men in the teaching profession.
They don't see it as a viable, attractive, lucrative, profitable, prosperous career choice. And I'm sure there's also something in the back of their minds about dealing with children on a continuous basis every day and so on, which in some people's minds may be more suited to the female gender. But yes, I mean,
how did we get to that? We had a lot of male teachers. What happened?
That's a conversation for another day, but I'm sure the sociology at the time was that's one pathway that was available and more easily available to the male in those days from a professional standpoint. lawyer and medicine was not as easily available. You're talking about traveling to the United Kingdom in particular, or to Jamaica, or to the United States. You're talking about a lot of money. Whereas people coming out of, say, for instance, secondary schools back then, Eastern Senior and Southern Senior, could have gone to the Teachers College in San Salvador.
Yeah.
And then they had the Teachers College in Oaks Field. Okay? You had a larger cohort of men at that time. Also, sociologically, if you look back at our social structure in those days, the women stayed mostly at home.
Yeah.
Okay? And the men were out to work. Things changed in the 60s and 70s. You and I are products of that in a great way.
Yes.
And so, but this conversation about making teaching and the career and education a lot more attractive has been, a part of our discussion now for some time. There's no question that one of the issues on the table certainly has to be pay.
Yes.
Okay, because it's quite a challenge to try to invite a man to select teaching with a teacher's certificate plus a bachelor's degree, in many cases a master's degree, to start out at $22,000, $23,000, $24,000, $25,000 a year. That's a little bit of a challenge.
Tell me some good news as we come to the end of this. What's ahead? What are the good things about that you can tell me and the Bahamian people about what's happening or what is about to happen with the Ministry of Education?
Very proud of this, and that is that when I walked in the door on May 15, 2017, little more than 1,700 of our 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds were enrolled in a government or government-supported preschool. Today, over 5,000 are. And were it not for the pandemic last year, we would have had even more. That is so very important because we have now learned through science, and the IDB can bear this out, OAS and United Nations, that those students who are benefiting from preschool education do far better than students who do not in later years of life. If we are talking about improving graduation rates, and go back to this exam and all that, if we're looking at talking about it, we better make investments in preschool education, and that's exactly what we're doing. Extremely proud of the work that Ms. Alicia Burrows and her team are doing in that regard, and I'm happy that we have so many private preschool institutions who have joined the Ministry of Education in providing this very important instructional period for our students. And we now know that that is beneficial because when we came into office on May 15, less than half of the students entering grade 1, less than half, were ready for grade 1. We're ready. If you're not ready for grade 1, you're not going to be ready for grade 3, grade 7, and grade 9. Number one. Number two, we expect this year we will complete the digitization of the educational system. Thank you, Holy Spirit. Complete the digitization of the educational system. It will, in that one stroke, revolutionize education across the landscape, the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. No matter where you are, you will be able, through the internet, to be instructed right sitting in your bedroom, on a boat, vacation, hospital. That's really a signature achievement for the Commonwealth of the Bahamas and the Ministry of Education.
Thank you very much, Minister, and a great note on which to end. Thank you again for sitting with us.
My pleasure.
And thank you for watching A Closer Look. Remember, you can also see us on Facebook and on YouTube.